It is a highly controversial issue that has divided friends, families, and social classes. It has turned entire countries upside down. In the 20th century, this opposition formed the basis of the Cold War, which demanded that you choose a side: capitalism, led by the United States, or socialism, which was led by the Soviet Union. Although in the present day, even Russia has adopted capitalist practices and there are discussions about the benefits of socialism in the United States, so today we ask ourselves, capitalism or socialism? In the mid-19th century, in Europe, particularly in England, during the height of industrialization, a significant disparity between the rich factory owners and the exploited workers became evident. Although production was at its peak, workers faced severe exploitation. They endured grueling workdays of 14 to 16 hours, received meager wages, and child labor was particularly poorly paid. The air was polluted, accidents were widespread, and workers had limited access to healthcare or vacations. All this occurred while factory owners enriched themselves without considering the well-being of the workers. According to a German thinker named Karl Marx, he asked himself, how did we come to this? Marx had read Hegel, who postulated that progress arises from the clash of contradictions. Societies also follow this pattern. Each stage of social development carries within itself the seeds of its own destruction and transformation into the next stage. For Marx, civilization, at least European civilization, had gone through the following stages. Primitive communism, an era in which resources were scarce, everyone capable of working did so, and goods were distributed among all members of the community according to their needs. During this time, agriculture and other techniques were developed that allowed for the preservation and accumulation of goods, leading to the second stage, slavery. For the first time, social classes were divided, those who worked and those who owned the means of production, even including the workers themselves. During this period, there was a belief that the powerful, kings and priests, gained their status thanks to divine favor. Consequently, the state emerged in this era and gradually gave way to the third stage, feudalism. In this stage, workers are no longer slaves, but rather serfs, although they remain subjected to their lords who own the lands and to whom they must pay tribute. Towards the end of feudalism, a social class of artisans and merchants, who commonly lived in villages or burgos near the fiefs, gained wealth and power. Marx referred to them as the bourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie began to associate and pool their money to create companies and finance larger ventures, such as risky voyages. These companies were called joint stock companies, and the money gathered for the purpose of growth was referred to as capital. On the other hand, ideas of freedom, democracy, and equality were promoted, giving rise to major revolutions like the French Revolution, where the nobility and clergy lost power, and even their heads, and those who now held authority were the owners of capital, the capitalists. The lands, previously owned by nobles or communities, became privatized. The ideas of the Enlightenment brought significant technological and industrial development, resulting in many farmers and peasants falling into poverty and migrating to cities to work in factories. This is how the fourth stage emerged, capitalism. Capitalism is explained and defended by economists like Adam Smith. Its main characteristics are land, tools, and factories. In other words, the means of production are not in the hands of the state or communities, but rather private property. There is freedom of the market. Everyone has the right to buy and sell whatever they desire, including their own labor, and to negotiate prices according to their own interests. Here, the concept of the invisible hand of the market is mentioned, the idea that individual economic actions, even if they seem selfish, contribute to the overall well-being of society. The capitalist ideal, therefore, is that laws and the state intervene as little as possible in the market. Freedom of enterprise. Anyone can start a business, assuming the risks and reaping the benefits. This encourages competition and innovation. Explained this way, capitalism seems ideal. So why did Marx witness what was happening in the cities of Europe? One of the main problems of the capitalist system is that of surplus value, that is, the profit that the capitalist expects to obtain from their investment. Imagine two people collaborating to produce a product. One contributes their labor, while the other provides the capital in the form of tools and wages. Let's say it costs $10 to produce, and they can sell it for $18. The extra $8 is the surplus value, and it goes back to the capitalist. Shouldn't the worker also receive a share? For Marx, the extraction of surplus value is a form of theft, contributing to the enrichment of the capitalist and the impoverishment of the worker. This leads to the accumulation of capital, the formation of monopolies and oligarchies. Adam Smith would say if the worker doesn't earn enough, she is free to seek a job where she earns more. There is a labor market, and if there is more job supply, it will cause wages to rise. But it is also true that if there are many people unemployed, the demand for jobs increases and wages will decrease. Could it be that unemployment benefits capitalists? One of the contradictions of capitalism is that if there are so many people who are too poor to buy even what they produce, who will buy things and how will the economy grow? The other contradiction is that capitalism assumes unlimited growth for corporations. However, the resources of the planet are limited and cannot provide an infinite supply of raw materials or process pollution indefinitely. And to top it off, where did the capitalists get that initial capital from? Most of them didn't work for it, they simply inherited it. Marx believed that inheritance alone made fair competition a fallacy. Some always started with more resources than others. For Milton Friedman, the only system that ensured freedom was capitalism, to which Marx would respond, "What freedom can one have when they possess nothing?" Because of all these reasons, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels found capitalism fundamentally unjust and believed that, like previous systems, it would have to change. But it wouldn't change on its own. Inspired by socialist struggles that had taken place before, they published the Communist Manifesto, which urged workers, referred to as proletarians, to unite and fight to seize power from the capitalists. For them, an ideal society would be communist, where social classes and private property would cease to exist. To achieve communism, they proposed that society should first go through a stage called socialism. The most important characteristics of socialism are social ownership of the means of production. Theoretically, tools, land, and factories belong to society as a whole, which is supposed to be represented by the state. Planned production, waste, excess, and pollution are avoided by ensuring that only what is needed is produced. This is regulated by the state. In a socialist society, the goal is to eliminate class exploitation and establish collective ownership and control over resources and production. The state plays a significant role in regulating and overseeing the economy to ensure the equitable distribution of resources and the satisfaction of people's needs. Economic activities, including prices, are regulated by the government to prevent exploitation and abuse. After interesting experiences, such as the Paris Commune in 1871, 40 years after Marx's death, socialism had a chance to be put to the test. The Soviet Union was created with the Russian Revolution, and other countries followed its example. How did it work? Well, it had very serious problems. First of all, there was a huge concentration of political power. Despite the leaders being called comrades, they practically controlled authoritarian regimes that, under the pretext of protecting the common good, remained in power for their entire lives. They led to a great loss of freedom by repressing dissenters through imprisonment or murder. Furthermore, due to extensive planning and limited incentives, innovation was severely restricted to areas that interested the state. This still happens in countries like Cuba, where on one hand, everyone is guaranteed healthcare and education, but on the other hand, there is a scarcity of food, housing, and almost no political freedom. So, if neither of the two systems is good, did humanity run out of options? Is there no way to have the freedoms offered by capitalism and the equality offered by socialism? Firstly, not everything is black or white. Thanks to the unity and struggles of workers, most countries now have systems that mix a capitalist economy with socialized aspects in different proportions. In the Nordic model, for example, there is freedom of enterprise and market, but workers have strong unions, and the state intervenes in wage negotiations. Even in the most capitalist countries, the state is responsible for providing roads and public services, and to a greater or lesser extent, education and healthcare services, and there is a constant struggle for these rights to be increasingly better and broader. Perhaps, if it weren't for socialist struggles, we wouldn't have 8-hour workdays, minimum wage, vacations, social protection for children, or social security. The idea is that societies can strive to find a balance between the advantages of capitalism, such as individual freedoms and innovation, and the benefits of socialism, such as social equality and safety nets. Different countries adopt different approaches and continue to refine their systems based on the needs and aspirations of their citizens. It is an ongoing process of finding the right mix that works best for each society. Secondly, besides these two prominent systems, there are other proposals. For example, anarchism advocates for the abolition of the state, the elimination of all hierarchy and authoritarianism, and working based on cooperation and mutual benefit. In fact, the original Soviets were egalitarian anarchist organizations before they were repressed and absorbed by the Soviet Union state. In Catalonia and Spain, the anarchist movement was very strong, and factories were collectively and democratically managed with varied results until international communism intervened to dissolve them, and later Franco imposed fascism by force. If you're interested in this topic, you can read works by authors like Emma Goldman or Pyotr Kropotkin, among other anarchist thinkers. However, these are just European models. People have organized themselves in various ways at different times and in different parts of the world. Different cultures and societies have experimented with alternative systems, community-based initiatives, and grassroots movements that prioritize cooperation, local autonomy, and direct participation. It's important to explore and learn from these diverse perspectives to gain a broader understanding of the possibilities for social and economic organization beyond capitalism and socialism. For example, the city of Catalhoyuk in Anatolia, dating back around 9,000 years, had an economically and socially egalitarian society where men and women had equal rights. Indigenous peoples throughout the Americas have had different forms of organization that include tikio or communal work and collective decision-making. These ideas have been embraced in places like Sharon, where all important decisions are made through consensus, or in the Zapatista caracoles, where the means of production are collective and decisions are made by a rotating good government council whose members do not receive a salary. The country of Bhutan, despite being a monarchy, has a Buddhist economy that prioritizes reciprocity and measures its progress not in terms of gross domestic product, GDP, but in terms of gross national happiness. Indeed, the autonomous region of Rojava in Syria practices its own unique version of democratic socialism, where cooperatives, largely promoted by women, play a crucial role. As you can see, capitalism and socialism are just two of the many ways in which human beings can organize themselves, and society can always change. And what about you? Do you think the economic system of your country should be changed? While I can't like, share, or subscribe to a video, I'm here to assist with any specific topic or question you have. Feel free to let me know what you'd like to discuss further.